Okay, so picture this. Your boss walks in with a request that sounds, well, completely impossible. You have to hire 30 brand new, highly skilled developers for a mission critical project, and here's the kicker. They all need to be fully productive in just 30 days. Yeah, it sounds like a total recipe for disaster, right? But one company actually pulled it off. So, how in the world did they turn this crazy demand into a massive success? Let's break it down. And this wasn't some hypothetical. This was the exact challenge a VP of engineering dropped on her team. They were about to kick off this huge migration to a new platform, and the timeline, it was completely non-negotiable. The usual, 6-month ramp-up period just wasn't going to fly. The entire project's success was riding on getting these 30 new hires up to speed at a pace that was pretty much unheard of. So, why did this sound so impossible to everyone? Well, to really get the scale of this challenge, we have to look at the painful reality of how developer onboarding usually works. It's slow, it's expensive, and honestly, it's often a super frustrating process for everybody involved. And right here, you can see the massive gap between the industry standard and what they needed to do. We're not talking about making a small improvement here. They had to somehow compress a 6-month process into one. That's a 6-fold acceleration. It meant the old playbook, yeah, that had to go right out the window. Let's just walk through why this takes so darn long. In a typical company, the first month is basically just HR paperwork and getting access to systems. Then you shadow people. Real work, like maybe fixing a tiny bug, doesn't even start until the second month. It can take up to half a year before a new developer is truly firing on all cylinders. It's just this huge, slow drain on time and resources. And that slow drain has a massive price tag. When you actually do the math and factor in the lost productivity for 30 developers over 6 months, you're looking at an opportunity cost of over $1 million. So this isn't just some HR headache. It's a huge financial problem that hits the bottom line hard. So how did they solve this $1 million problem? Well, they didn't just try to speed up the old broken process. They threw it out completely and brought in a brand new blueprint for speed, a really powerful 3-layer framework. Let's dig into how it works. And here it is. The whole solution was built on 3 core pillars. First, use AI to instantly figure out the existing system. Second, give people structured, self-paced courses to learn the tools and processes. And third, and this is key, create a safe, hands-on environment where they can actually practice. Simple in theory, right? But it was absolutely revolutionary in practice. Okay, this is where the magic really starts. On day 1, instead of having new hires dig through a mountain of outdated documents, they just unleash an AI. In just 2 hours, it scanned their entire complex system and generated all this critical documentation, architecture maps, data models, the whole shebang. This is the kind of stuff that would normally take a new developer months of painful detective work just to piece together. All right, so once the developers understood what they were dealing with, they needed to learn how to actually work with it. That's layer 2. They were enrolled in self-paced online courses covering the company's specific platform and coding standards. And here's a clever bit. To really light a fire under them, they were offered cash bonuses for finishing the courses and getting certified quickly. Now for the most crucial part of all, because, knowledge is pretty useless if you can't apply it. The team needed a way for 30 new developers to practice their skills without, accidentally breaking the entire production system. They basically needed a flight simulator for coding. And to do this, they built something called a training pipeline. Think of it as a complete parallel development environment. It was loaded with realistic data and pre-written assignments or user stories that were just like real-world tasks. This let all the new hires build, test, and even deploy code in a totally safe sandbox. But what happens when you get stuck in the flight simulator, right? You can't have a senior developer on call 24/7 for 30 different people. This is where they brought in their secret weapon, an AI mentor. A developer could ask a fundamental question, just like this one, something they might feel a little too nervous to ask a busy colleague. And boom, the AI mentor gives a perfect expert-level answer instantly. And notice, it doesn't just give the rule, it explains why the rule exists to improve things like testability and reusability. It also gently reinforces that this is the required company standard. This taught best practices from the very first line of code they wrote. So this all sounds great in theory, but did this three-layer framework of AI discovery, structured learning, and hands-on practice actually work? Well, the results were frankly stunning. Let's look at the numbers. The impact on speed was just immediate. Let's take the time it took for a developer to ship their very first piece of code to the live product, what's called the first production commit. That time plummeted from an average of 10 weeks all the way down to just 4. They were getting real work into the hands of users in less than half the time. Incredible. And that speed translated directly into major financial savings. Remember that $1 million opportunity cost of the old way? Well, the new approach, even including all the investments in tools and training, cost just over $250,000. That's a staggering $825,000 in savings. That's a 76% reduction in cost. But as the VP herself pointed out, this was never just about saving money. The real value was time. That multi-million-dollar migration project was on a razor-tight deadline. A 6-month delay in getting the developers productive would have put the entire thing at risk. Time was the one resource they absolutely could not afford to lose. And you know what? What they built wasn't just some one-time fix for one project. It became a permanent, repeatable process. They literally transformed onboarding from this dreaded bottleneck into a genuine strategic capability. Now they have the confidence to scale their teams up super fast for any new project, which gives them a massive advantage over competitors who can't. So this all leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Most companies see onboarding as a chore, right? A cost center you just have to manage. But this story shows it can be so much more. It can be a driver of speed, of quality, and of strategy. What would change if onboarding wasn't a problem to be solved, but was actually your company's greatest superpower?